PS3. Plan and implement safety program, system and safe work procedure for construction activities in accordance with WSH, construction, regulations. UK3. WSH, construction, regulations 2007. Lesson 3. UK3. WSH, construction, regulations 2007. Permit to work system. General provisions. Ladders. Cantilevered and material platforms. Electrical safety. Disposal of materials. Formwork structures. Demolition. Explosives. Piling. Compressed air environment. Penalties for noncompliance. Permit to work system. Application 10. This part shall apply only to the following types of work that form part of any building operation or works of engineering construction, referred to in these regulations as high-risk construction work, demolition work, excavation and trenching work in a tunnel or hole in the ground exceeding 1.5 meters depth, lifting operations involving tower, mobile or crawler crane, piling work, tunneling work, work on a scaffold where a person could fall more than 2 meters, and work involving entry into a confined space. Permit to work, PTW. Principles. The permit to work system is a formal documented process used to manage work identified as potentially hazardous. The permit to work system aims to ensure a systematic and tiered authorization for hazardous work. Enable responsible persons to be aware of all hazardous work conducted their locations in the workplace and when the work cease. Establish a standardized approach with clear individual responsibilities to take all reasonably practicable measures to ensure the task can be carried out safely. Enhance supervision of hazardous work with routine monitoring of the work, and provide a visual display of permit to clearly identify locations of approved tasks and task durations. Permit to work, PTW. Implementation of permit to work 11. It shall be the duty of the occupier of a worksite at which any high-risk construction work is or is to be carried out to a. Appoint a project manager for the worksite. b. Appoint a safety assessor, who shall be either a workplace health and safety officer for the worksite or a competent person, and c. Take, so far as is reasonably practicable, such measures as are necessary to ensure that a permit to work system in accordance with this part is implemented for that worksite. Permit to work, PTW. 2. The permit to work system referred to in paragraph 1 shall provide that a. Any high-risk construction work at the worksite must be carried out with due regard to the safety and health of persons carrying out the high-risk construction work in the worksite. b. Such persons are informed of the hazards associated with the high-risk construction work and the precautions they have to take, and c. The necessary safety precautions are taken and enforced when the high-risk construction work is being carried out in the worksite. 3. It shall be the duty of the occupier of a worksite to ensure that no person is appointed as a safety assessor unless the person is one whom the occupier reasonably believes is competent to perform the functions and duties of a safety assessor. Permit to work, PTW. No high-risk construction work without permit to work. 12. 1. Subject to paragraph 2. Any person who carries out any high-risk construction work in a worksite without a permit to work first issued by the project manager of the worksite in respect of that high-risk construction work shall be guilty of an offense and shall be liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding $20,000. Permit to work system. Application for permit to work. 13. An application for a permit to work shall a. Be made by the supervisor of a person who is to carry out any high-risk construction work in a worksite. b. Be made in such form and manner as may be required by the project manager of the worksite. c. State the measures which will be taken to ensure the safety and health of persons who carry out the high-risk construction work in the worksite, and d. Be addressed to the project manager and submitted to the safety assessor for the worksite where the high-risk construction work is to be carried out. Permit to work system. Evaluation of permit to work. 14. 1. On receipt of the application for a permit to work, the safety assessor shall a. Assess whether all reasonably practicable measures have been taken to ensure the safety and health of the persons who will be carrying out the high-risk construction work in the worksite, and b. Inspect the site, including its surroundings, where the high-risk construction work is to be carried out together with the supervisor of the person who is to carry out the work to ensure that the high-risk construction work can be carried out with due regard to the safety and health of the person or any other person at work in the worksite who may be affected. Permit to work system. Evaluation of permit to work. Evaluation of permit to work, CONT. 2. If the safety assessor is satisfied that the high-risk construction work can be carried out in the worksite with due regard to the safety and health of workers and other persons at work in the worksite who may be affected, he shall endorse the application for the permit to work and forward the endorsed application to the project manager of the worksite. Permit to work system. Issue of permit to work. 15-1. The project manager of a worksite may issue a permit to work in relation to any high-risk construction work which is to be carried out in the worksite if the project manager is satisfied that a. There has been a proper evaluation of the risks and hazards involved in the carrying out of the work based on the available information. b. No incompatible work which may pose a risk to the safety and health of other persons at work in the worksite will be carried out at the same time in the same vicinity as the high-risk construction work. c. All reasonably practicable measures will or have been taken to ensure the safety and health of the persons who carry out or are to carry out the high-risk construction work, and d. All persons who are to carry out the high-risk construction work are informed of the hazards associated with it. Permit to work system. 2. The project manager of a worksite who issues a permit to work in respect of any high-risk construction work shall retain a copy of the permit to work. 3. It shall be the duty of the project manager of a worksite to exercise all due diligence when performing his function in relation to the issuance of a permit to work under paragraph 1. 4. Subject to Regulation 19, a permit to work shall be valid for the period stated therein, and if the high-risk construction work for which the permit to work is issued is not completed within the validity period, a fresh application shall be made in accordance with Regulation 13. Permit to work system. Posting of permit to work and supervisor's duty. 16. It shall be the duty of the supervisor of any person who carries out any high-risk construction work in a worksite to a. Clearly post a copy of the permit to work issued in respect of that high-risk construction work, including where reasonably practicable, a sketch of any area where the high-risk construction work is permitted, at the work area where the work is carried out, and b. Ensure that the copy is not removed until the date of expiry or date of revocation of the permit to work or on completion of the high-risk construction work, whichever is the earlier. Permit to work system. Monitoring of work. 17-1. It shall be the duty of the project manager of a worksite to continually review the progress of all high-risk construction work being carried out in the worksite to ensure that the high-risk construction work is carried out with due regard to the safety, health and welfare of the persons carrying out the high-risk construction work in the worksite. 2. It shall be the duty of the supervisor of any person who carries out any high-risk construction work in a worksite. Permit to work system. Duty to report incompatible work. 18-1. It shall be the duty of any person who is aware of any work being carried out in a worksite which is incompatible with any high-risk construction work being carried out in the worksite to immediately report the incompatible work to his supervisor, the workplace safety and health officer, the workplace safety and health coordinator or the project manager of the worksite. 2. In this regulation, any work in a worksite which is carried out at or in the vicinity of any high-risk construction work and which is likely to pose a risk to the safety or health of persons at work in the worksite shall be treated as incompatible work. Permit to work system. Revocation of permit to work. 19. If the project manager of a worksite who, after issuing a permit to work in respect of any high-risk construction work, is of the view that the carrying out of the high-risk construction work poses or is likely to pose a risk to the safety, health and welfare of persons at work in the worksite, he may order the high-risk construction work to cease immediately and revoke the permit to work. General provisions. Structures and supports. 20-1. it shall be the duty of the occupier of a worksite with a supporting structure to take, so far as is reasonably practicable, such measures as are necessary to ensure that the supporting structure complies with paragraphs 2 and 3, and to obtain an endorsement in respect of the supporting structure under paragraph 4. 2. Every supporting structure in a worksite, including its foundation, shall be of sound design, good construction in accordance with the design, and of adequate strength for its intended purpose, and properly maintained and checked periodically for excessive corrosion, erosion, physical deterioration or alteration so that its stability is not affected and that it is suitable and adequate to perform the function for which it is intended. General provisions. Falling hazards. 22-1. It shall be the duty of the occupier of a worksite to take, so far as is reasonably practicable, such measures as are necessary to comply with paragraphs 2, 3, and 5, at the worksite where a person is liable to fall a distance of more than 3 meters. Identification of a fragile surface, skylight, and avoidance of the fall hazard. These brittle or fragile areas are to be first identified and the stability of the structure and soundness of the roof are assessed as part of the risk assessment process before starting roofing work. General provisions. Falling hazards. 3. In a worksite, every guardrail, barrier or other similar means of fall prevention referred to in paragraph 2, shall a. be of good construction, sound material and adequate strength to withstand the impact during the course of work in the worksite. b. be placed on the inside of the uprights and secured so as to prevent accidental displacement, and c. be placed so as to prevent the fall of any person. General provisions. Work on roofs. 23-1. Where in a worksite, any person carries out any work on any roof from which he is liable to fall off or through a distance of more than 2 meters, it shall be the duty of the occupier of the worksite to provide sufficient and secured anchorage for the attachment of safety harness in the course of the person's work, and protection of the person against any sliding or fall from the roof. Check for falling hazards. Work restraint systems can be broken down into 3 key components: A. Anchor point, B. Connecting element, C. Fall protection harness and knowledge. Utilizing the work restraint system. General provisions. Entry into building under construction. 30. It shall be the duty of the occupier of a worksite. A. Where a building under construction in the worksite is more than 2 stories high, to provide designated entry and access at the ground floor with adequate overhead protective cover for persons entering or leaving the building, and b. to take all reasonably practicable measures to prevent any person from entering or leaving the worksite by or through other means of entry and access. General provisions. Personal protective equipment. 33-1. It shall be the duty of a. the employer of any person who carries out any work in a worksite which requires any protection referred to in paragraph 2, or b. the principal under whose direction any person carries out any work referred to in subparagraph a. in a worksite, to provide and maintain, as far as is reasonably practicable, the appropriate personal protective equipment to the person. 2. The protection referred to in paragraph 1 is as follows: a. Eye protection. B. Fall protection. C. Foot protection. D. Hand protection. E. Head protection. F. Hearing protection. G. Respiratory protection. Ladders. Construction. 43. It shall be the duty of the employer of the person who carries out any work in a worksite which requires the use of a ladder, or the principal under whose direction any person carries out any work which requires the use of a ladder in a worksite, to ensure that the ladder is of good construction, sound material and adequate strength for the purpose for which it is used. Ladders. Resting surface and prevention against slipping. 44-1. It shall be the duty of a. the employer of any person who carries out any work in a worksite which requires the use of a ladder, or b. the principal under whose direction any person carries out any work which requires the use of a ladder in a worksite. Safe use of ladders. Ladders used to access another level should be tied and extended at least 1 meter or 3 feet above the landing surface to provide a secure handhold. Things that are not allowed when climbing a ladder: never carry anything in your hand. Never use the top step of any ladder. Never place tools or anything else on a step. Safe use of ladders. Ladders. 2. The surface upon which any ladder rests or bears upon when used by a person using a ladder to carry out any work in a worksite shall be A. Stable, B. Level and firm, and C. Of sufficient strength to safely support the ladder and any person or load intended to be placed on it. 3. Every ladder in a worksite shall be positioned and securely fixed when used by any person carrying out any work so as to prevent slipping, swaying or sagging. 4. If such fixing is impracticable, the ladder shall be held in place by a person. Ladders. Landing place 45. 1. It shall be the duty of A. The employer of the person who carries out any work in a worksite which requires the use of a ladder, or B. The principal under whose direction any person carries out any work which requires the use of a ladder in a worksite. Cantilevered and material platforms. Cantilevered and material platform 46. The requirements on cantilevered platforms or material platforms mentioned in this part shall apply to any cantilevered platform erected for the purposes of loading and unloading of any material or equipment, and any material platform which I. Is used for the purposes of loading and unloading of any material or equipment, and 2. Is subjected to a load weighing 1,000 kilograms or more. Cantilevered and material platforms. 3. It shall be the duty of the professional engineer who designs a cantilevered platform or material platform for use in a worksite to A. Take, so far as is reasonably practicable, such measures as are necessary to ensure that his design can be executed safely by any person who constructs or uses the platform according to his design, and B. Provide to any person who is constructing or is to construct the platform all design documentation, including all relevant calculations, drawings and construction procedures, as is necessary to facilitate the proper construction of the platform according to his design. Cantilevered and material platforms. Guardrails and tow boards 47. 1. It shall be the duty of the occupier of a worksite where any cantilevered platform or material platform is used therein to comply with paragraphs 2 and 3. 2. Every open side of a cantilevered platform or material platform used in a worksite from which any person could fall more than 2 meters shall be provided with guardrails and tow boards. 3. Where any gate is provided in place of guardrails at the outer edge of a cantilevered platform or material platform used in a worksite, it shall be constructed to open inwards to the platform. Electrical safety. Electrical power circuits. 34-1. It shall be the duty of the employer of any person who carries out any work in the course of which the person may come into contact with any part of an electrical power circuit in a worksite, or the principal under whose direction any person carries out any work in the course of which the person may come into contact with any part of an electrical power circuit in a worksite, to comply with paragraphs 2, 3, and 4. 2. Before any work is carried out at a worksite, the worksite shall be inspected to ascertain whether there is any electrical power circuit which any person may come into contact with in the course of his work in the worksite, and any tool or machine which is connected to any electrical power circuit and which any person may come into contact with in the course of his work in the worksite. Electrical safety. 4. No person shall be permitted to work in a worksite where he may come into contact with any part of an electrical power circuit unless A. He has been advised of the location of the electrical power circuit, the hazards involved and the protective measures to be taken, and B. He is protected against electric shock. I. By de-energizing the circuit and earthing it. 2. By guarding it with effective insulation or other means. Disposal of materials. Accumulation of debris. 50. It shall be the duty of the occupier of a worksite to ensure that debris shall not be allowed to accumulate so as to constitute a hazard in the worksite. Method of removal of debris, etc. 51. It shall be the duty of the employer of any person who carries out work in a worksite, or b. the principal under whose direction any person carries out work in a worksite, to ensure that any debris, brick or other materials in the worksite shall be removed by means of chutes, buckets, hoists or any other method which will not endanger any person in the worksite. Disposal of materials. Floor openings for debris removal. 52-1. It shall be the duty of the occupier of a worksite to ensure that every opening used for the removal of debris on every floor in the worksite which is not close to access, except the top or working floor, is provided with an enclosure from floor to ceiling. 2. Where it is impracticable to provide an enclosure under paragraph 1, it shall be the duty of the occupier of the worksite to ensure that the opening is so barricaded that no person has access to within a horizontal distance of 6 meters from any opening above through which debris is being dropped. Disposal of materials. Chutes 53. It shall be the duty of the occupier of a worksite to ensure that a. any chute provided for the removal of materials in a worksite is entirely enclosed on all sides, except at openings used for the receiving or discharging of material, and b. any opening of any chute, except the top opening, in the worksite is closed when not in use. Construction of chutes 54. It shall be the duty of the occupier of a worksite to ensure that every chute in the worksite is of good construction, sound material, adequate strength and rigidly supported throughout its length. Disposal of materials. Design of chute by professional engineer 56. 1. It shall be the duty of the occupier of a worksite to ensure that a. any chute exceeding 12 meters in height for use in the worksite is constructed, installed or repositioned in accordance with the design and drawings of the professional engineer who designed the chute, and b. no person shall use any such chute unless a certificate under paragraph 3.2 has been issued in respect of it. Formwork Structures. Part 9 Formwork Structures. General duty on occupier. 57. It shall be the duty of the occupier of a worksite with formwork structures to comply with regulations 58 and 59. General requirement. 58-1. In a worksite, every formwork structure shall a. be of sound material, good construction and adequate strength, b. be free from patent defect, c. be suitable and safe for the purpose for which it is intended, and d. be properly braced or tied together so as to maintain position and shape. Formwork structures. 2. In a worksite, every formwork structure shall be capable of sustaining the total dead, live and impact loads imposed on the structure with a minimum safety factor of 2. 3. Where a formwork structure in a worksite is of 2 or more tiers, frames or shores. A. The tiers, frames or shores shall be securely and effectively connected vertically. B. Safe means of access to and around the formwork structure shall be provided for the purpose of inspection, and c. Every designated access point shall I. be clearly marked with a sign or label, and 2. be made safe for use by any person using the access point. Formwork structures. 4. All reasonably practicable measures shall be taken to ensure that any new or existing formwork structure or any part of such a structure which may become unstable or is in temporary state of weakness or instability due to the carrying out of construction or erection work, does not collapse. 5. No load is to be applied to unsecured structures in a worksite except as permitted by the design documentation, and no part of the formwork structure shall be loaded as to render it unsafe to any person. Explosives. General duty on employer and principle 115. It shall be the duty of the employer of any person who carries out work in a worksite which involves the handling or use of explosives, or the principal under whose direction any person carries out work in a worksite which involves the handling or use of explosives, to comply with regulations. Explosives. Handling of explosives. 116-1. Explosives shall not be handled or used in a worksite except in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions and by or under the immediate control of a designated person with adequate knowledge of the dangers connected with their use. 2. Reasonably practicable steps shall be taken to ensure that, when a charge is fired in a worksite, All persons are in such positions which do not expose them to risk of injury from the explosion or from flying materials caused by the explosion. Special storage to store explosive is required at site and 24 hours guard is needed. Explosives, smoking, open lights, etc. 117. 1. Smoking, open lights and flame or spark-producing devices shall be prohibited in or around the explosive magazine or storage enclosure in a worksite. 2. Appropriate warning signs of the prohibitions, understood by persons involved in the worksite relating to the handling or use of explosives, shall be posted and maintained at every place where the explosives are kept or stored. Explosives, loading and tamping. 123. It shall be the duty of a. the employer of any person who carries out the work of loading and tamping of explosives in a worksite, or b. the principal under whose direction any person carries out the work of loading and tamping of explosives in a worksite, to ensure that only a hardwood rod free from any metal part is used for the work. Explosives, warning and retreat. 125. 1. Before the firing of any blast in a worksite, it shall be the duty of the person firing the blast a. to sound a warning distinctly audible to all persons within the danger zone, and b. to ensure that no blast shall be fired while any person is in the danger zone. 2. When the warning is sounded, all persons within the danger zone shall retire to a safe distance or to a safe shelter. Demolition, general duty on occupier. 69. It shall be the duty of the occupier of a worksite where demolition works are carried out to comply with Regulations 70 to 76. Preparation of demolition work. 70. 1. Before commencing any demolition work in a worksite, a. all glass and claddings on the exterior of the building to be demolished shall be removed, and b. all gas, electric, water, steam and other supply lines shall be shut off and capped. 2. Where it is necessary to maintain any power, water, gas or electric lines during demolition in a worksite, such lines shall be so relocated or protected with substantial coverings so as to protect them from damage and to afford safety to every person. Demolition, protection of adjacent structures. 71. 1. Before and during the demolition of any structure in a worksite, the stability of the walls, ceilings, slabs, beams and all other structures adjacent to the structure which are to be demolished shall be determined. 2. Where there is a possibility that an adjacent structure is unsafe or will become unsafe because of demolition operations in a worksite, no demolition shall be performed unless sheet piling, shoring, bracing or such other means as may be necessary to ensure the stability of the adjacent structure and to prevent the structure or other property from collapsing is provided. Demolition, removal of load-bearing structures. 72. Where any demolition work in a worksite involves the removal of any column, beam, floor or other load-bearing structure, it shall be the duty of the occupier of the worksite to ensure that the work is carried out a. with due regard to the integrity of the remaining structure, and b. in accordance with the method statement prepared by a professional engineer. Demolition, demolition of walls, partitions, etc. 73. 1. Demolition of walls and partitions in a worksite shall proceed in a systematic manner and all work above each tier of floor beams shall be completed before the safety of its supports is impaired. 2. Masonry shall neither be loosened nor permitted to fall in a worksite in such masses as to endanger the structural stability of any floor or structural support. 3. No wall, chimney or other structure or part of a structure which is being demolished in a worksite shall be left in such a condition that it may a. fall or collapse inadvertently, or b. be weakened due to wind pressure, vibration or other causes. Demolition at work. Piling, stability of adjacent structures. 129. 1. It shall be the duty of the occupier of a worksite to ensure that before carrying out any piling work which may affect the stability of any structure within the worksite, the structure is adequately supported by underpinning, sheet piling, bracing or other means of shoring in accordance with the design of a professional engineer, and b. A certificate under paragraph 3.2 has been issued in respect of the underpinning, sheet piling, bracing or other means of shoring. Piling. 2. It shall be the duty of the professional engineer who designs the underpinning, sheet piling, bracing or other means of shoring as required under paragraph 1, to support a structure. A. To take, so far as is reasonably practicable, such measures as are necessary to ensure that his design can be executed safely by any person constructing the underpinning, sheet piling, bracing or other means of shoring according to his design. B. To provide to any person who is constructing or who is to construct the underpinning, sheet piling, bracing or other means of shoring all design documentation, including all relevant calculations, drawings and construction procedures, as is necessary to ensure that the underpinning, sheet piling, bracing or other means shoring is constructed in accordance with his design, and C. To take, so far as is reasonably practicable, such measures as are necessary to ensure that the structure is safe to any person working on or near the structure by reason of such underpinning, sheet piling, bracing or other means of shoring. Piling. Inspection 130. 1. It shall be the duty of A. The employer of any person who carries out any work involving the use of any piling equipment in a worksite, or B. The principal under whose direction any person carries out any work involving the use of any piling equipment in a worksite, to ensure that the piling equipment is inspected daily by a designated person before the start of any piling work for the day and that every defect is corrected before the piling equipment is used. 2. It shall be the duty of a designated person to take, so far as is reasonably practicable, such measures as are necessary to ensure that any inspection carried out under paragraph 1 is conducted properly. Sheet piling. Piling. Pile driver not in use 131. It shall be the duty of A. The employer of any person who carries out any work involving the operation of a pile driver in a worksite, or B. The principal under whose direction any person carries out any work involving the operation of a pile driver in a worksite, to ensure that when the pile driver is not in use, the hammer is choked or blocked in the leads or lowered to the ground. Compressed air environment. General duty on occupier. 91. Unless otherwise provided, it shall be the duty of the occupier of a worksite where work in a compressed air environment is carried out to comply with the regulations. Safe system of work. 92. No person shall enter, work in or leave the compressed air environment in the worksite except in accordance with a safe system of work which, so far as is reasonably practicable, is safe and without risk to health. Warning notices. Compressed air environment. Compressed air environment. Appointment of competent person for compressed air works. 101. Sufficient number of competent persons shall be present on site to supervise the execution of work in a compressed air environment in the worksite at all times when such work is being carried out. 2. Suitably qualified and experienced persons shall be appointed who shall at all times be in control of the air supply plant and be in attendance at the site when any person is employed in the compressed air environment. 3. Competent persons shall be appointed as gauge attendants who shall at all times be in control of the control valve plant and be in attendance at the site when any person is employed in the compressed air environment. Appointment of competent person for compressed air works. Trained and competent person is required man-lock attendant. A mandatory training course for individuals who are assigned as man-lock attendants at construction worksites or any place that requires personnel to work in a compressed air, CA, environment. No person shall be employed as a man-lock attendant in a worksite where work in a compressed air environment is carried out unless he has received adequate training to familiarize him with the hazards associated with compression, decompression and compressed air illness and with the keeping of records under these regulations. Compressed air chamber. Compressed air chamber. Identification badges 101. 1. Identification badges containing relevant particulars shall be issued to any person who is employed in the compressed air environment in the worksite for the guidance of others should the person be taken ill after leaving work. 2. It shall be the duty of every person who has been issued an identification badge under paragraph 1, to wear the badge at all times while at work in the worksite. Compressed air chamber. Man locks 105. 1. Where work is carried out in any compressed air tunnel in a worksite, a suitably constructed and equipped man lock shall be provided for each tunnel. 2. The man locks shall be sufficiently strong to withstand any air pressure, internal or external, to which the structure may be subjected whilst in use and in an emergency. 3. The man lock shall be of adequate size to accommodate all persons likely to use the lock at any one time. 4. The man lock shall be maintained in working order and in a clean state at all times. Compressed air chamber. Man lock and medical lock attendance 108. 1. Every man lock and medical lock in a worksite where work in a compressed air environment is carried out shall be under the charge of a lock attendant. 2. No person shall be employed as a man lock or medical lock attendant in such a worksite for more than 12 consecutive hours in any period of 24 hours. 3. No person shall be employed as a man lock or medical lock attendant in a worksite where work in a compressed air environment is carried out unless he has a. Been certified to be medically fit by a medical practitioner, b. Been trained in first aid, and c. Received adequate training to familiarize him with the hazards associated with compression, decompression and compressed air illness and with the keeping of records under these regulations. Compressed air chamber. Training of personnel. 114. It shall be the duty of a. The employer of any person who carries out any work in a compressed air environment in a worksite, or b. The principal under whose direction any person carries out any work in a compressed air environment in a worksite, to ensure that the person does not carry out such work unless the person has received adequate safety and health training to familiarize himself with the hazards associated with such work and the precautions to be observed. Penalties for noncompliance. Any person who willfully obstructs, delays or refuses to carry out any instruction given by a man lock attendant in the course of the attendant's employment in a worksite shall be guilty of an offense and shall be liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding $1,000 and, in the case of a second or subsequent conviction, to a fine not exceeding $2,000.